Hi guys, and welcome to the second episode of the Vision Vixen Podcast. I'm really excited to share with you today's guest. I met this woman about a year ago, and it was a time in my life where I was lacking a lot of confidence and clarity with my business, Dance It Out Ireland. I knew what I wanted to achieve, I just didn't know how to achieve it, and I lacked a lot of confidence in that area as well. So I met this woman, I underwent 6 sessions with her, and within 3 months after my last session, I achieved all of my goals. I expanded my business from Galway into Bray to Dublin. I made some amazing additions to my team, and I had some incredible opportunities come my way. So, without further ado, I would like to introduce you to Dr. Niamh Flynn from the Galway Clinic. If you're listening on audio, make sure you check us out on YouTube, The Vision Vixen, and feel free to subscribe to our channel. Otherwise, if you're listening on YouTube, make sure you check us out on Spotify, iTunes, and Amazon. So Niamh, welcome to the podcast. How are you doing?
I'm great, Angela. Thank you. How are you?
Excellent. I'm so excited to have you on today. If anyone isn't aware who Dr. Niamh Flynn is, Dr. Niamh Flynn is an incredible hypnotherapist that practices from the Galway Clinic. And I was introduced to her probably this time last year, and ever since you've just stayed on my mind, and I'm just so excited to share all of your knowledge and expertise. So then what was your first introduction then to hypnotherapy or hypnosis?
Well, studying psychology while I was teaching aerobics, and I suppose I spent more time teaching aerobics than going into college, but I managed to get through my degree and then went off to the UK and I did a master's in sports medicine, which was a great combination because you understand the physiology and the psychology, and that's really what you need for sports psychology, I think. At some stage of my career, I was working in a gym in Gort, and I really loved it. It was great fun and loved the members, but there was no other staff. It was just myself running it. So as you can imagine, the hours are quite long, and I think it all got too much, and I was doing too much outside probably as well. So I was teaching a class one evening, fell down the stairs and ended up on crutches. So I couldn't get out to Gort because I lived in Galway City. Okay. And at the time, the internet was very, very new. But I was looking up the internet to see, okay, what'll I do? I've got 6 weeks where I'm on crutches. I can't get out of the house very much. And I needed to learn something new. And I had an office, I think, at the time, part-time as well in Terryland, or maybe that came after. I can't quite remember, to be honest. But I remember being disillusioned with psychology itself, thinking, for me, I didn't feel I knew enough, and I didn't feel that the traditional techniques were working well enough. And when I found hypnosis, and I was absolutely intrigued, I thought, right, next plane out of here, I'm gone. So I got a course. I did a few courses actually, and was over and back to the States quite a lot to learn hypnosis. And the minute I started using it, it was like magic wand.
So did you find that you were led to the hypnotherapy because psychology, you weren't seeing results from practicing sports psychology?
I didn't really like the traditional approach to sports psychology, and sports psychology was so new as well. I guess you were relying on borrowing techniques, say, I suppose, from every aspect of psychology, but they just didn't fit with athletes. And athletes, of course, need to move quickly because their career is quite short, for a lot of athletes at least. The career path is short, and for amateur athletes as well. You don't get very many chances to play county level or to play. Once you're in, it's different, but there is that window, I think. And so when I saw the results happening, even after one session, you could see the difference. It was exciting, and it was great work satisfaction, really. And the people I was working with were very happy as well. So I suppose I fell into it.
Okay, so what do you think, what is it about hypnotherapy that is really that makes such an impact in comparison?
It's because with traditional techniques, you're working mainly with the conscious mind, which is quite small. You think of it as the top part here is our conscious brain. And then the bottom part is our subconscious. Now that is way more power. That's where all our habits are, our belief systems. And what hypnosis does is there's a critical factor between those two layers. It's like a security guard, really. And hypnosis pushes the security guard over to one side, and you can then put suggestions into the subconscious. And once you do that, the subconscious we start to think differently. Our beliefs change, attitudes change. And when you change the thoughts, as well as the belief systems, your behavior changes as well. So performance changes. And we see the world in a different way. But it's quite fast because that's the most powerful part of the mind that you're directly working with.
Absolutely. Like, I could not agree with you more. If anyone knows me, knows that I studied psychology along with dance in England. And I was like yourself, so disillusioned with psychology because I felt like every study that was done, there was always a study saying, well, actually, no, if you take this type of person, it's not going to work out. And as individuals, we're just so different, backgrounds and everything. But when I went to when I went to a first session with you, I was so open to it, and I knew the power of the subconscious mind. It wasn't until 3 months back after I looked back and I said, what? I did that, or I figured this out. So what do you think that hypnotherapy is most powerful for?
Well, with somebody, and you're very focused as well, and it always helps if somebody knows exactly what they want, because you can only give somebody a suggestion that they want. You couldn't give somebody a suggestion they didn't want. So really, it's powerful for so many things: chronic pain and weight loss, and what else? Business. I love working with business people. Weight loss. You can see the results so quickly. So for business, I see a lot of different things. Some people want to focus on a specific turnover number. Other people might want to be very calm and collected in their decision making in business. So say you've got the CEO of a multinational, and they've got a lot, every business, you've got a lot of responsibility at every role. And sometimes if you're at that level with a lot to deal with, and a lot of balls in the air, sometimes it can get a bit cloudy. And that's what I find is that they might work on clarity and just talking things through the first part of the session and trying to figure out, look, what's the best way to go here? What's the best? Now, the person always has their own answers. It's just about teasing the answers out of the person. So I'm not giving advice on it. I'm literally just getting the person to recognize what they already know and then giving them the suggestions in trance. And chronic pain is a little bit different. You're helping people to manage pain. Sometimes the pain goes, but a lot of the time it's more about managing it and being able to do more day to day, increase the activities. So it's probably when people are motivated to go from here to here for even to stop smoking. They want to just you're either a smoker or you stop, or you're not a smoker. And one session you can stop smoking if you're motivated. If you're not motivated, no point in going and doing hypnosis.
Well, even my friend, she has been a smoker for like pretty much her whole life. And she just woke up one day, like it was only about 3 or 4 months ago. She's like, Angela, I've decided I'm not a smoker anymore. And just that shift of actually making the decision, she's not smoked. And she's like, I don't even crave them anymore. So I think there's a lot to be said. I love that, it's such a broad area of people that you can help, because you're saying obviously you performance athletes, business people, smokers, people who need to lose weight, and like you said, you do a lot of work with people with migraines. Is that right?
That's right. I ended up doing a PhD, and initially the topic was supposed to be sports psychology, but it eventually had to be on migraines, which wasn't an avenue I thought I'd go down, but I found it quite interesting. When I had it finished, it was much easier to look back at it. And it has been useful, very useful for people with migraines, because now that I know a lot about migraines, I can apply that knowledge in depth. And I think I know the questions to ask that can really help people, because I do find that's probably the one in terms of chronic pain that I'm most successful with. There are other chronic pain conditions and the results don't seem to be as high. But again, I suppose I do think it comes back to knowing what to ask and what to look out for, and to know the triggers and migraine and things. So a lot of the time people will come back and say, my migraines are gone. And that's amazing, because migraines are so debilitating.
So let's say I'm just a normal person. I've never really I'm not too familiar with hypnotherapy. What's the best way for me to prepare for a session?
Half jokingly, imagine I have a magic wand, and what would you like if I had a magic wand? And get them to picture how their life would look if they could have anything they wanted in terms of weight loss, or in terms of sport and performance, and even down to specific times. Say an athlete, a lot of athletes, they have GPS systems that can calculate the speed they run at, the amount of ground they cover in a match. So they might say, look, I'm hitting this speed, that's my top speed, but I want to be able to be even faster. Now, so most of that's going to be physiological, but some of it's psychological, because if you believe you can do, like Roger Bannister did, he believed he could break that 4-minute mile and barrier, and he did. If somebody comes in and they want to, say they want to lose weight, often people will come in, Angela, and they'll say to me, look, I'd be happy enough at this weight, but I don't think that's enough. I think you need to be really passionate about your goals. And I'll say to them, well, what would you be really happy with? And let's aim for that. And sometimes they don't quite believe it. So I even had somebody recently, and they said to me afterwards, which is a fair point, I can't imagine myself at that weight. It's been so long. So what I suggested was there has to be some kind of app or some kind of Photoshop that you can do with a photograph, and just shrink yourself down so you can visualize it in your mind's eye, because you need to be able to see it. And I think also to know, because there's a lot of misconceptions about hypnosis, and some people think that they're going to be under control of somebody else, or they feel like that they're going to tell all their secrets, or what else might be a common misconception. They'd be the biggest one, I suppose, or I won't come out of hypnosis, I'll be in trance forever. But really, you're totally in control with hypnosis. You will hear everything. Now, you will drift away, and that's what I explain to people, is that, look, it's going to be like waves on an ocean. You listen to me, you won't listen. You listen, you won't listen. And funny, people think then that they hear everything, and consciously they don't, but subconsciously they do. So the brain is going to pick up on subconscious messages. But at all times, if I was to say to you, or any hypnotherapist was to say to you, anything that you didn't agree with, straight away you'd be opening your eyes and awake, and you wouldn't take the suggestion.
What does a session then look like, and how many sessions would you recommend?
Generally, and it's just a general guideline, what I have found over the years would be 6 sessions over 6 weeks seems to be a really solid foundation for changing the belief system. But some people need less, and some people need a few more. It's rare you need a few more. And even after the first session, most people see a difference. You can never say everybody, but most people do. And then it needs to be reinforced. So it'll be a little bit like you get into the car to drive it for the very first time, and then the second time you get in, it's just that little bit easier, and then the third time, and so on. And after a while, you're not even thinking about the brake or the clutch or anything. You're just driving. It's all automatic, and it's in your subconscious through repetition. But hypnosis will accelerate that repetition. So I guess 4 sessions or 6 sessions isn't a huge amount really in the whole great scheme of psychology. But I do find for weight loss, 6 is a really good number. 1 session for smoking, that's all I think is needed. Wow. And yeah, migraines would be 6, chronic pain 6 sessions, because you'll find week by week there's progress in some things, and then you need to go back and reiterate other things, because you can't give the brain too much at once. It's advisable to treat the subconscious like a 5-year-old. Okay. So if you give it too much, it just goes, yeah, good luck, I'm out of here. If you give it a simple amount, it's fine.
Who would be the most frequent patient of yours?
Probably sports people, football, rugby, and then migraines, I guess, and weight loss. And often you'll find that there is anxiety that comes through the door. So even with athletes, it can be quite different from one athlete to the next. You will have a completely different session. Sleep problems are another issue that come up a lot for athletes. Yeah, anxiety is a big one. Funny, especially these times. It's
Really?
yeah, there's the uncertainty and people worrying about, are there going to be games? You know, should I be training? Do I need to train? And there's burnout then, because a lot of athletes would normally have time to rest. Their season is over.
Mm-hmm.
But I suppose in this year, with everything that's happened, a lot of athletes didn't take a break and they're going to keep working. So it's very important to make sure that they're not burnt out.
In your time, what is the one story or the one patient that you've dealt with that it just blows your mind how they changed or what they achieved?
There's quite a lot, because people are so interesting. There was one story that I always remember because I had to do a City Channel interview, and I asked him, could I use the story, and he gave me permission. And when he came in to me, I asked him, look, what do you want me to do here? What would you like? What can I help you with? And he said, I want to feel important. And I said, grand, okay, I'll give you suggestions. And we talked through a lot of different things. And the next week he came back to me and he said, you're not going to believe this. He said, I went out to the lift the last day I was here. I'm standing at the lift waiting for the lift to open. And when it did, somebody behind me said to me, you better go in first. You look important. And he
Wow.
was absolutely phased. Now, whether it's coincidence or what it is, who knows? But I just thought it was a nice little story. And it showed people probably said that to him a lot, but it was because his mind was focused on it. You know, maybe they didn't say that in those words, but he probably heard things like that at work, or people were acknowledging him at work, but he probably never heard it because he wasn't listening for it.
Mm-hmm.
And that's when his queue was open. But he found it quite amusing, and I thought it was
Amazing.
great.
My sessions with you, I found that all of these things that I wanted were already available to me. I just wasn't open for the opportunity, or I would have just subconsciously be like, no, that's not for me, or no, not the right time, or so is it that when you go into hypnotherapy, you're just training your subconscious to just be more aware of what you want to be aware of, what you want to achieve?
It's a huge element, that, Angela, and you've hit the nail on the head. Because if you think about it, if you decide to buy a new car and you decide, okay, I'm going to buy a black BMW, you start seeing black BMWs everywhere. Now they're already there, but your mind is primed to see them. And I think that maybe that's what happened with you. Also, you're ready for it, but part of it as well is bringing up the confidence to go for something.
Mm-hmm.
So if you can detect in a session where somebody's confidence might be low, or maybe they just feel, I don't know, there's doubts or there's belief systems that might be stopping them from achieving something. Always trying to mesh those things together and create almost like the ideal situation in their mind where they have the confidence to go for it, but they see it as well. Prime, like you said, you just become conditioned to see it rather than block it. You could block it, put on a filter and ignore it. But then, yeah, there's a huge element of that in it.
And I think what really stood out to me in the sessions that I had with you, we did regression. I think it was the second or third session that we did it. And regression, do you want to just tell everybody about regression first before I tell my story?
Age regression we're generally used for things like panic attacks or phobias. And really what you're doing is you're tracing back to see where the panic attack comes from, or where the anxiety comes from, or a pattern. And it can be, I've had people in a lot over the years for fear of enclosed spaces. It could be flying, lifts, and it's never about the fear of the plane itself. And it's usually either a fear of losing control or the enclosed space. So it could be one of either. You'll trace back and you'll bring people back to different memories and find there's most of the time there's a pattern where something has happened where the brain decides at a certain point, look, I've had enough of this. It's dangerous. I want you to shut down when you come near these instances again. So it might kick off the breathing to be short, the heart rate to race. And really what it is the brain is trying to protect us, but it's overprotecting us. So if by going back and looking at those instances that would have happened in the past and looking at them as an adult rather than through a child's eyes, the severity of the instances can be reduced in terms of the emotion attached to them can be reduced so that the brain isn't overreacting, because logically everybody knows, look, I don't need to be afraid of a lift. I don't need to be afraid of the water. I don't need to be afraid of whatever it is people are afraid of. So the regression helps us to trace it back. It's a very thorough way of getting rid of an anxiety. You wouldn't use it with everybody because I think it requires a lot of experience. You're in quite a vulnerable state. The person's in quite a vulnerable state and they're in age aggression. And so I think it's best left to people who have a lot of experience with suggestion work, but it's very useful and very powerful. And usually there's kind of automatic change, like it's instant.
Yes, because one of the reasons I was going to you for was in confidence and in business, just with clarity in business. And I remember when we did the regression and you're like, okay, Angela, it's normal to cry if it happens, or, it can, you're in quite a vulnerable state. And I was like, yeah, I'll be fine. And you're taking me down, you're getting me to feel that, this feeling that I had in my stomach and really embody it. And then you counted me down, and I remember 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, boom, I'm back into my child's body, 4-year-old, when we were living in Canada, and my mom was leaving for work. And I was really, I was so scared that she was going. I thought she was never going to come back again. And that was a memory that I never thought that I had. And it's crazy to think that it's all these first emotions or first experiences have an effect, like 28, like I'm 28 now, like what, 26, 25 years later. Not that I think it's still like, oh, I'm scared every time my mom leaves now, but it comes up in different ways.
It does, doesn't it? Like it gets tentacles and it affects us, and we don't know how until we go back and we find out, because the brain is very good at shutting things down, and it's a coping mechanism which can work very well. But it's funny, it's the enlightenment that comes with it, isn't it? It's that kind of aha moment where you think, that's why. But for a child, that's very scary. It really is for a child who worries. A lot of the time, I found with regression over the years was people would go back to their first day at school and they thought their parents were never going to come back for them and collect them. They were just feeling abandoned at school because nobody had explained to them, I'll pick you up at 3 o'clock, I promise you I'll be back. They just assumed the child would know. But in a child's eyes, the child really doesn't know that. So we have to be so careful with our dialogue and what we say to people, because it does impact us, as you can see. And regression is a great way to see that.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So what would you say to anybody who's pretty skeptical, who would be very skeptical of
hypnosis? Or
yes.
I think it's healthy to have a bit of skepticism. And at least now, in the last, maybe it's not even 10 years, I don't think, but in the last 8 or so years, we can see brain scans of people in trance, and you can see the difference that suggestions make when they're given in trance and when they're given when somebody isn't in trance. And they're the same suggestions, but the brain activity is very different. So we do know that there are different suggestions that affect different parts of the brain. We know that, if it's generic suggestions, they're very mild suggestions. Even those suggestions, so say somebody goes into a doctor's office and they're told to take this pill, it'll make you feel better, and there can be a placebo effect. But one study looked back at that in the 1970s and found that actually hypnosis is very different to placebo, because you can reverse a placebo pain relief with naloxone, but you cannot reverse hypnotic analgesia with naloxone. So what really the study was telling us was that a placebo will work on an opioid system in the brain, but hypnosis works on a completely different system.
Okay.
So a lot of people confuse placebo and hypnosis, but it's very, very different. And the studies, brain scans now show it, which I find great, because when I started, it's in 1997. Now I started hypnosis later than that, but I'm nearly 20 years doing hypnosis, and you didn't have that proof. You had scientific studies, clinical studies that would show, here we do this amount of sessions, this is what we did, and this is the result, and it's positive. And hypnosis helps with mainly chronic pain. There's a lot of chronic pain, and for IBS patients and different types of illness. But there was nothing showing what's actually happening in the brain. There was theories like you'd have in psychology a lot of the time, but now we have physical scientific proof, which is, for me, because I love hypnosis, I find it fascinating. But
yes. So Niamh, if you were to look back in a few years' time, if you were to look back at your life and you've done everything that you wanted to do and you've achieved everything you wanted to achieve, what would you like to leave behind?
I would love to be able to say that I helped enough people to get rid of their migraines. And I'm still working on that. I have an MP3 program that's available as a download, and people can buy that. So it doesn't matter where they are in the world, they can use that. And it is clinically proven to work and to reduce headache disability. So if that happens and enough people get relief, the study will have been worth it. And because it's such a disabling disease, I think I can see the difference. It does change people's lives. You sometimes get the nicest emails, and there's been a few parents who've said, you've given me my child back, thank you. And I haven't really. I've just used a tool that has helped that child to get from A to B. They were just a bit troubled. These would be 16, 17, 18, even 20-year-olds. But I guess for parents, it's always a worry, and that is the best satisfaction.
Yes.
So, not a huge legacy, but happy enough with it.
I think that just sounds incredible. It sounds amazing. Like, I absolutely love the work you're doing. I love how you're helping a broad range of people. I think, as well as helping everybody with anxiety. Like, I know how crippling anxiety is, and like you said, it's such an epidemic that affects people nowadays. And yeah, I think you're doing an amazing job, Niamh. So if anybody wanted to get in touch with you or wanted to speak to you about anything, what would be the best way to do that?
The website is bodywatch.com, and all the contact details are there, Angela. Thank you.
Perfect. Look, Niamh, it was an absolute pleasure to have you on the podcast. All the best, and thank you so much for being here. Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.